Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EUG podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Hywel Teague. Teague, how are we doing today, brother?
Doing really good, thanks, Hector. Crazy weekend, ADCC 2022 in Las Vegas. Lots of fun, lots to talk about, I'm sure. But thanks a lot for having me on the show today.
No, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you on the show. So let's get right into it. Mo and Flo, they did an amazing job with this ADCC 2022. We had a lot of upsets. We had a lot of new up in the next generation showing what they're capable of doing. What were your thoughts about the whole thing?
I think the first thing that you need to talk about, of course, is just the scale of the event. Just to make sure that everybody understands that we've never seen anything like this in the world of grappling before. This is a landmark moment for jiu-jitsu as a whole. Like, the sport has been growing steadily for many years now, and the first ADCC took place in 1998. So if you look at what happened back then compared to what now, the growth has just been incredible, and especially in the last 5-6 years, just unprecedented growth, leading into what has, like I said, what was the biggest grappling event that the jiu-jitsu world's ever seen. I think anybody who was in the arena felt the energy. Anybody who was watching it online would have seen that this was special. This was one for the history books.
Yes, I totally agree. Like I said, Mo and the whole Flow Grappling and everyone else with the production team, they did an amazing job. And it was just something totally different that we've ever seen in the grappling community. Obviously, the standout, right? Gordon Ryan, he did his thing, made it look easy. We had done a breakdown with Jake Watson. We talked about how the division and also him doing that would affect him, but he was very smart. He paced himself through that division right into it. I mean, he just dominated the whole thing.
Yeah, and like you said, he made it look easy. Now, Gordon has, called himself the greatest of all time in no-gi grappling for a few years now. But I think a few of us were still waiting for just a little more confirmation of that fact. So remember that Gordon only won his first ADCC in 2017. That's not that long ago. So in the space of 5 years, he went from kind of a rookie black belt and upstart into, without doubt, now he is the most successful no-gi grappler of all time, the greatest. And you could say that the results show that, but also the way that he won. And I think that he did make it look very easy. He was definitely pissed off that he didn't get that 100% submission rate. There was just one match where he couldn't quite find the finish. Victor Hugo was able to hang on there, but he went out there and he never had a single moment of trouble. He didn't get scored on. He just went out there and he did what he does. It was systematic. It was just so one-sided. And like I said, it left no doubt whatsoever that his claim to be the greatest no-gi grappler in the world is absolutely a fact at this point.
I totally agree on that. So let's look at the bracket here, Ryan's bracket. I mean, obviously, it wasn't easy. Everybody on that bracket were, they belonged there. And again,
yeah, the thing, right? How can somebody like Gordon make it look so easy when you've got such a stacked bracket? Because this is ADCC we're talking about. This isn't like an average tournament where anybody can sign up. This is the best of the best.
Right. You had the names of, Victor Hugo, Cyborg, Rocha, Pena, Nicky Rodriguez, which was, to me, he surprised a lot of people. I kind of told everybody I'd love to see that matchup with him and Gordon, just to see, since they've trained together. I wanted to see, did they know a lot about each other? What do you think about that matchup in that bracket?
So you're right that they did know each other very well, but of course they haven't trained together, or they haven't really, been around each other too much for about just over a year now, since the Danaher Death Squad split, and since Danaher and Gordon went off with the New Wave team, and Nick Rodriguez and all the other guys, Craig Jones, Nicky Ryan, Ethan Crownston, and those guys, they formed the B team. So I think Nick Rodriguez was the one match that people were intrigued about because, of course, they are, like you said, former training partners, been split for about a year now. And anybody who saw Nick Rodriguez, his coming out party at ADCC 2019, and just what he's capable of, he's a physical specimen. He's very quickly developing his technical skills to match his athleticism. And people were like, wow, maybe there's somebody who can finally push Gordon. Now, I'd heard a lot of stories, about what happened in the training room, but they were always one or the other. I either heard, oh man, Nick used to put it on Gordon in the training room. If there's anybody who can do it, it's Nick. And then on the other side, I would hear, wasn't even close. Right. Gordon would tap Nick at will, just like he does with everybody he faces in competition. So I was kind of intrigued to see how the match would go based on the things that I'd heard. But at the same time, I was a little unsure what to expect, because you just don't know what to believe, right? But the first thing that I noticed when Gordon walked onto the mat, this was the only match where he wore a long sleeve rash guard. So in every other match that he competed at on the weekend, he had a short sleeve rash guard. But I think it was very notable by the fact that he chose a long sleeve rash guard for his match with Rodriguez. And Rodriguez had worn a rash guard in his other matches, but he took it off for the match with Gordon. So at the highest level, it's these seemingly small details that make the difference. Rodriguez wanted to be slippery. He wanted to be on the outside. He didn't want to get caught up in Gordon's game. Gordon wanted as much friction as possible so that he could control the beast, so that he could get hold of Nick Rodriguez. And once he had hold of him, that he could maintain that grip.
Right. And I noticed also, again, great job by Gordon and John Danaher with the strategy. They had a strategy for every single opponent going into that. They knew exactly, well, you know what? I'm just going to let him take me down. I'll end up on bottom, play the rule set. What I do like about Nick Rodriguez, I got to say, he's got a great body lock pass that he used the majority of the time. And he was trying to get there. Impressive. And to me, he did a great job against Pena. Obviously, we all wanted to see Pena and Gordon go at it. But again, he just displayed that he's been improving during this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like I said, his reputation was always that of a bit of a brawler, right? A bit of a kind of a brute former wrestler coming in and using that athleticism and that intensity. But he's more than caught up when it comes to the technical now. And of course, the Gordon match aside, Gordon got hold of that leg. It was done. It was clinical. It was a surgical finish, just like every other one of Gordon's matches at this event. But yeah, you got to give it to Rodriguez. That is now twice that he's made it to the final in consecutive editions of ADCC. 2 silver medals to his name, but a win over Felipe Pena in the semi-final match should not be overlooked.
No. And again, we were curious to see what side Rodriguez would be put on. Would he be put on the Gordon side or the Pena side? So we were able to get both ends of the stick. Felipe, let's talk a little bit about Felipe. What do you think about his performance? He was looking good up to that Nicky Rod fight. What were your thoughts?
I don't think it's unfair to say that it was definitely something of an underwhelming performance for Felipe this weekend. His first match against Josh Saunders, the Australian trials winner, was an 8-0 win. That's kind of what you would expect. Felipe, I believe, was the number 3 seed in that division, and he went up against one of the lowest seeded competitors. His second match was a submission against Max Jimenez, just a giant from GF Team who had submitted former champion Orlando Sanchez in his first match. But then Pena struggled with Rodriguez in the semifinal. Of course, as we said, Rodriguez used that incredible body lock passing that he has, the same system of passing that he used to beat Yuri Simoes a couple of years ago on Who's Number One. So that's now 2 former ADCC champions that Rodriguez has beat using that particular guard passing system. And then Felipe Pena didn't show for the 3rd place match. He basically forfeited the 3rd place match so that he could save himself for the absolute division. But then you look at what happened there, and again, an underwhelming result in that he lost in the 2nd round to Tai Ruotolo in an incredible match. It was a 0-0 match, but it was really exciting, as is every Tai Ruotolo match. But Felipe Pena you wouldn't expect him to lose to somebody like Tairo Tolo, the 19-year-old who's just coming through onto the scene. It wasn't what Felipe was hoping for, and I'm sure he'll be very disappointed with the performance.
Yeah, and I've noticed, like, I think styles make fights. I think that body lock kind of gave him a hard time. He didn't really, they couldn't understand how to defend it or how to get him create space to get, at least his hips out or kind of get an angle. So he kind of struggled in that. And like you said, Rodriguez has done this to a couple of ADCC world champions. So again, credit to him. I think he's a purple belt, purple brown.
Just got his brand. Not that it means much. I mean, when you hit the final of ADCC a couple of times, I don't think the belt color makes a difference, right?
Right. And again, I think he's one of those guys. He's a rising star. He's going to be, getting better. And again, they got 2 years to keep going and keep growing and keep evolving.
Speaking of that body lock pass as well, I've been training a lot of no-gi here in Austin, Texas for just over a year or so now. And, there's so many great grapplers here in Austin, and those styles have obviously filtered down to the average kind of guys that we have training that I'll meet at open mats or when I visit different gyms. And the body lock passing system is very, very popular right now. So many people using the body lock passing, and it is a pain in the ass to deal with. It is so hard. When people make that connection and they get their arms linked around your torso, even going to half guard, you think, oh yeah, no problem, I can play from here. It's awful. And guys have really developed that game extremely well. And I think Nick Rodriguez is one of the best guys in the world in displaying the effectiveness of that.
Right. I actually, we talked about this because Kennedy and Cobrinha, they spent their time here for the last 3 weeks. And we were going over body lock passing. And obviously Cobrinha's got some, he's been there, he knows. And he showed a little detail to counter the position, creating space, bridging, getting your hands on the shoulder, bridging first, and then exploding to your side, which eliminates the grip. It doesn't matter how, we've tested it, we went over it, and I've used it this week already and put myself there. And it's been effective. So maybe I'll do a video on it, what he showed me. And again, always learning from that guy. He's always.
I appreciate that. I need some tips on that.
It's you'll be like, no way. Like, this is crazy. It's this simple. It's pretty much a bridge, push on the shoulders and shrimp out and get to your side and keep your hands on the shoulders. Because a person's going to keep their hands connected, right, the whole time, that body lock. But if you're able to create a little bit of space underneath you and then you shrimp out and push and get on your side, then that grip's not going to be the same angle as you were expecting when you're flat and you're trying to push. So I found it very interesting. I'll probably do a video in the next couple of days and show what he showed me. So it was amazing. Again, always keeping that white belt mindset and keep learning from that guy. It's insane.
Very cool.
Awesome.
You want to go through some of the other champions, some of the other performances?
Absolutely. Are we on? We're going to the next, minus 99?
Kaynan Duarte. 2-time champion, 2 editions of ADCC in a row, and 2 different weight classes. So, of course, Kaynan's an interesting story because he won the trials in 2017 when he was still a purple belt. And I met this kid literally at the trials that he won. I had no idea who he was. And I was there at the trials in Rio de Janeiro. And he just tore through it. I think he had 5 or maybe even 6 matches that day, including against some very, very tough veteran black belts. And if he had 6 matches, he submitted 5. If he had 5 matches, he submitted 4. Remember, there was only one guy who was able to survive, and that was Patrick Gaudio. And Kaynan was a purple belt, came out of nowhere. I got talking to him after he won, and he's like, yeah, I've been training with Andre Galvao, and he was the one who told me, oh, yeah, you should do trials. And, man, he went to the World Championships in 2017 in Finland, and he won his first match by submitting Pablo Popovic, the great ADCC champion. And then he lost his second match to Keenan Cornelius, his teammate, Atos teammate. So he was very young and he was very immature at the time. He had no idea of the leg lock game, and he was a phenomenal talent, tons of potential, but he was raw. When he came back in 2019, he looked like a polished veteran. And, his 2019 performance where he beat Buchecha and he beat Nick Rodriguez, And then he dropped a weight category to come back here in 2022 to compete in the under 99. And just again, you know, he looked flawless. I think Kaynan Duarte he's not always the most exciting of competitors to watch. He sometimes has a somewhat conservative style, but I think the efficiency of his game can't be questioned. And again, the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's one match where he took so many negative points, right? But again, he's very strategic. Atos is very good at game planning and being strategic and understanding how to play the game. Like you said, he's grown in the last few years, and man, he's he's coming, and I think he still has a lot of room to improve and get better in 2 years. But I was very impressed, and honestly, I wasn't really surprised that he won that category. Of course, I thought Craig Jones and Marigali were going to give him trouble, but I think he would always find a way to be strategic on the way anybody plays.
Yeah, the thing about Kaynan is, like you say, he's a very smart competitor. He knows what he needs to do to win. And it's really difficult to stop him, you know, gi or no gi. This guy is very well-rounded. It's very smart. And I think it's interesting you brought up the penalties in his final with Craig Jones. And I'm glad you did, because I want to address this. So Kaynan received 8 negative points in his match against Craig Jones in the final. That's the most I've ever seen in an ADCC match. So it's important to note that in ADCC, you don't have penalties. A penalty is actually a minus point. It's a negative point. Right. So for example, he had scored, and let's just say he had like 4 points on the board. They hit him with a penalty. He suddenly has 3 points. They hit him with another penalty. He suddenly has 2. So Kaynan was scoring. And this is the crazy thing, because he was actually scoring. He scored a total of 12 points in his match against Craig. And yet his 8 negative points reduced his score to 4 at the end. But you have to think as well, this was a 20-minute match. So 8 penalties, that's one approximately every 2.5 minutes. So you can see in the case for the penalties being issued. If things slow down after 2.5 minutes after he scored and he's kind of not doing too much, yeah, by all means, hit the guy with a penalty. Right. And do so until you feel that there is enough action flowing. But here's my problem with it. That's the only match all weekend where it occurred. And I think that the real problem is the inconsistency in how those penalties were applied, because we did not see one other match all weekend where there was anywhere near that many penalties awarded.
I agree. Yeah, he took. I mean, they were penalizing nonstop every 2 minutes, and and again, he went in there with a strategy. He played the game, and he played with the rule set, right? And again, yeah, people were booing and doing that, but again, they don't understand that. Like he said, you guys are not in here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in here, and I have to do what's best for myself. So I agree
against Craig Jones as well. You know, you're going to take a risk against that guy.
No way. And again, he knows that Craig has a great leg lock game. He gets underneath very well. So again, he played a very smart, strategic game, and hats off to him. And again, it just goes to show you that some of these guys have come in, they do their studying, they work on specific training positions, and I feel like he did that a lot.
I want to just run quickly through his championship run. His first match against Owen Livesey from the UK, a European trials runner-up who was a kind of a last-minute alternate. Kaynan won that one 8-0. His next match, El Cruz, El Monstro from Checkmat, was a win 5-2. That was a hard-fought match. A lot of wrestling in that one. He scored a referee's decision, 0-0 decision against Lovato in the semifinal. And I think that's very interesting to see that Lovato, the veteran in his final ADCC, made it all the way through to a third place match. Incredible performance. And then, of course, Kaynan was able to win via points against Craig Jones in the final. So, yeah, very impressive run from Kaynan.
Yeah. One guy that's, stood out to me right there, obviously, Nicolas Marigali.
Yeah.
I've known him back when he was at Mario Hayes's, when these guys were sleeping in the gym. in the gi, watching him in the gi. And I mean, these guys he was putting away. He's always been a workhorse. And to see him go to no-gi and put on the performance that he did, just watching his wrestling, how he's improved. It's amazing to see. But I'm not surprised, but like I said, because I know that this kid is a workhorse. He puts in the work, and he's willing to learn. That's one thing that I've always seen from him.
He started training no-gi this year.
Crazy.
You know, already a world-class black belt, already a multiple-time world champion in the IBJJF, and yet had never trained no-gi in his life, ever. It's kind of rare, right? Yeah. But for him, it was an absolute truth, you know, that the guy had literally never trained no-gi. He started in about February of this year, moved to Austin, Texas, started training with Danaher. And in that time, went undefeated on Who's Number One, came to ADCC as somewhat of a dark horse, somewhat as an outsider. He was actually the 15th seed in this division, which is kind of crazy. But, you know, he was on the same side as Craig Jones, as Yuri Samois. And Muragali went out there. He won his first match against the South American Trials winner, Henrique Sagoni, by submission after getting dumped. He got launched and then he hit the mat, reversed it, got the submission, which kind of, you know, answered a lot of questions whether he'd be able to handle ADCC. Second match, won a decision against the two-time champion, Yuri Samois. You know, Yuri, who would later go on to win the Absolute. Incredible result there. He lost a very close 0-0 referee decision to Craig Jones in the semifinal, and then won against Lovato Jr. in the third place match. So Muragali went on to take the bronze medal in his division. And can you believe it then that he came back and he took a silver medal in the Absolute? So
again, I don't feel like the pressure was on because he's always been at the highest level and you know in the gi. So I don't think the pressure of being at that level was going to affect him. I was just wondering how his grips were going to change or if he would adapt from the gi to the no gi. But he did an amazing job. Yeah. John Danaher did an amazing job, and man, this is just the beginning for that guy. He's going to be scary to deal with.
Yeah, honestly, this was a hell of a coming out party. I'm interested to see where he goes from here for his first ADCC, less than a year of no-gi training, and he takes home 2 medals. Phenomenal.
Yes, for sure. So let's jump into the minus 88 division. We had a returning, you know, champ, Matez Denise.
Yep.
There was, you know, there was a lot of new generation kids in here. I say kids because there's still some of them 18, 19 years old. But we talked about this with Jake Watson. I told him that Bodoni was going to be the dark horse in this division. Why do I say that? I've seen this kid when he was training with Lucas Lepri. Right. He was very technical, very precise. He moved like Lepri. And I thought that he would be able to transition to no-gi very well. So, I mean, that was my dark horse when I spoke to Jake Watson. But man, Ty, a lot of these guys, you know, up and comers, you know, they were out there putting it on the line. What are your thoughts on this division?
It was a great one. I mean, 88 kilos. It's always a good division to watch. I feel there's that sort of it's that middle ground between strength and power with the technique and the athleticism. It all mixed together. 88, it always fireworks. Bodoni was definitely not my pick. You know, he came in sort of in the seeds. He was roughly right around the middle of the seeding, maybe a little bit lower because he was a trials winner. He qualified by winning the East Coast Trials in Atlantic City last year to get onto the big show. And if you look at his credentials, I mean, you and I both know how solid Giancarlo Bodoni was, but he's a low-key kind of guy. He's never really had a breakout moment until now. So people were maybe like, yeah, that guy's good, but they were paying attention to Mateus Diniz, to Lucas Hulk Barboza, to Pedro Mourinho, you know, that was where the focus was.
Right.
So Bodoni, as you said, I think that not many people even realize, not many people even know, because like I said, he's a low-key kind of guy. Black belt under Lucas Lepri, has spent a lot of time training and teaching out of Bernardo Faria's academy in Boston. And as kind of part of the extended BJJ fanatics kind of family as well, he served as a demonstration partner on many of John Danaher's instructional DVDs. So that's where that connection was originally forged. And of course, having direct access to John's coaching for the hours and hours and hours that it takes to film those, I think gave him the idea that, you know, if I want to pursue this, I'm going to relocate and I'm going to train with John daily. And that's what he did. He moved to Austin, Texas. He's part of the New Wave team, and he's one of the New Wave medalists, one of the champions out of the New Wave squad. And Giancarlo came very, very close to hitting 100% submission rate as well. It was only his match with Isaac Bayens in the opening round. Actually, Bodoni had the choke locked on as the buzzer went, you know, right at the 10-minute mark. But he submitted Mateus Diniz in a pretty, again, one-sided match. Bodoni looked so solid. He submitted Owen O'Flanagan in the semifinal, the European trials winner out of the UK, who, again, was another dark horse who broke through, submitted him in less than 2.5 minutes, and then submitted Hulk Barboza in the final for me, one of the most impressive performances of the entire tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, a lot of people don't know. For the people that know, he's a very quiet guy.
Right.
I finally saw him actually like speak up when he won the whole thing. Like, this is my house, you know, just out there. I was like, oh, he actually talks. And again, hats out to him and making that, and, you know, deciding to move there. I think that was a great move for him. And people don't realize, like, people talk about, oh, well, you know, he left me or he went somewhere else. Man, this is a sport where you have to be selfish sometimes. And I feel like it's the person's career. I deal with this all the time in MMA as well. I have students here that have gone other places. And man, I tell them, listen, you have to do what's best for you. I did my part. You come in here and I teach you. And again, if you feel like you're missing something, by all means, you have to go, you do what you want to do, because I don't want to be the one that held you back and later on, you know, be like, man, I should have just let the person go. So I think he made the right move. He went to John's, and you see the result. And
I'm sure he would have done so with Lucas's blessing as well.
Oh, for sure.
That kind of guy, you know.
He's one of those guys. He's a straight shooter. He's gonna tell, you know, Lepre, hey, you know what? And Lepre gave him the, hey, go ahead, man, do what you think is best for you. And congratulations to him.
Yeah. Amazing performance. And you know what? I ran into him last night, actually. We were on the same flight home from Las Vegas to Austin. And we were chatting in the airport when we arrived. You know, there was a lot of jiu-jitsu on that flight last night. I was on the same flight as Danaher, as Gordon, as Giancarlo. If that plane had crashed, then the jiu-jitsu world would have lost a lot of talent that day. But we were chatting just as we were waiting for our bags. And I asked Giancarlo, I said, oh, well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to take a vacation? And he's like, no. He's like, I've got the EBI Absolute tournament next month. It's like about 4 weeks away. So he's straight back in the gym after this, straight back to work, and he's going to do his camp for EBI as well. And I think now he'll go into that, and a lot of people will be paying a lot of attention to Giancarlo. He's not going to be the dark horse anymore.
Right. No, totally agree. Other guys, too, that standed out in that division was Ty Rotolo. Yeah. Right? I mean, he looked awesome. And again, he had to fight his teammate right off the bat, you know. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And
that's what happens when you put 3 guys from the same team in the same division, right? ADCC rules, you know, if you train together, then you are going to get seeded to meet second round at the latest. So with 3 guys in the division, that meant that Hinger and Ty had to face off first round, and then Hinger won that match and went on to face Lucas Hulk in the second round. Because of course you can't have teammates meet in the semifinal or final. And I'll admit that, you know, the Hinger Ruotolo match was not necessarily a surprise for me in the results. I did believe that it could go either way, but a surprise in how much action there was, man. That was one of the best matches of the weekend. Hinger, I think, just had that edge, maybe the kind of the big brother edge or something over him, but incredible performance.
Yeah, this bracket was more of a mixture of a lot of experience with young, up-and-coming talent. Yeah. Amazing bracket. Again,
another guy I want to shout out in that bracket actually is, just mention it once more, that Owen O'Flanagan. who made it through into the third place match. So Owen came in and as a European trials winner, was not a particularly high seed in the division. He had to go up against Shanji Hibero, the legend Shanji Hibero, in his opening match. And O'Flanagan, man, he just showed absolutely no fear. He showed no hesitation. He went out there and he threw the kitchen sink at Shanji. He had Shanji caught in a very, very tight armbar. He was hunting for all manner of leg locks, and he ended up winning via 3-0 from a back take. That was a holy shit moment, you know. But it was a big upset because, you know, O'Flanagan, kind of as a European trials winner, sometimes those guys are there to make up the numbers. And that's not, you know, specifically talking about Owen, but I'm talking about the way that the European trials winners are perceived. It's like, yeah, those guys are never going to win, right? Well, he came out there and he was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. So he went out there, he beat Shanji in his first match, and his second match against Mason Fowler tapped out Mason with a leg lock. Now, Mason is one of the toughest guys in the division, and for Flanagan to do that, incredibly impressive. Fell short to Bodoni in the semifinal match, fought Wagner for the third place match, but a breakout moment for that guy for sure.
You know what I have to say, in this ADCC, I saw the growth in the European countries in grappling. I have to admit, like, there's a lot of up and coming talent, and you're like you said, we weren't expecting. They're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, he's from there, but man, they've shown that they're coming and they're getting better. And shout outs to all the, you know, European countries for putting in that work and, you know, evolving and catching up. I mean, they're not there to sleep on. That's what
I mean, you can guess I'm pretty happy about that fact, right? So obviously, you know, for me, it's really satisfying to see the growth of the European jiu-jitsu scene, because I've always believed that there have been some really, really good grapplers in Europe with tons of potential to do well on the international scene. And they just sometimes haven't had that opportunity, that breakthrough moment, you know? Well, they definitely had that this weekend at ADCC, with Sam McNally from Ireland beating Gary Tonon, the #1 seed in the opening round of the 66 kilogram division, with Owen O'Flanagan performing so well in the 88 kilogram division, and of course the champion Fionn Davis for the UK winning the under 60 kilogram division. I don't think it's possible to sleep on the Europeans anymore. Those guys, they're right there.
They're right there. Absolutely, absolutely. So let's jump to 77 now. We had
this was just one of the best overall performances, overall divisions I've ever seen. You know, there were a lot of questions about how 77 would go. For me, it was like a dream bracket, because you just looked at the names in it and it was just like every first round was a super fight. It was 77 for me is always one of my favorite divisions. But when you look at it, man, this was loaded.
Yes, it was. I mean, obviously we had the returning champ, JT Torres. Man, honestly, I'm going to be honest, I thought he was going to take it, right? Because, he's been looking amazing. And he fell a little short, right?
Yeah. It's no, basically the smart money was on JT to win this.
Right.
Because, you know, he was a 2-time back-to-back champion coming into this. Everybody was expecting JT to do the three-peat. And, you know, the #1 seed, he's got a game tailor-made for ADCC. You had to think that that JT was coming in and he was going to be one of the guys to hit the podium, or if not, take it all. And he lost his second match to PJ Barch of 10th Planet in, no offense to PJ, big upset. But more shocking was the way in which PJ won, because he didn't just win by like a close decision. He hit a clean takedown straight into side control against JT Torres, 4-0 win. Very, very emphatic victory against, the favorite. So, yeah, that was a great moment for PJ. I'm sure, JT was disappointed with his performance, but overall, that guy's legacy is secure. There's no question in JT Torres. The guy's a legend.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And again, we got to give credit where credit's due. PJ Bart, he had a clean takedown. His wrestling look on point, his timing, and man, he played the game. And
he leveled up.
Yep, he tested himself and said, "Hey, I can wrestle with this guy," and you can see the confidence building as the time kept going. So,
PJ is the guy who always does best in brackets. If you look at his super fight track record, it's a little spotty. He's a little hot and cold when it comes to super fights. But you put that guy in a bracket, let him get some momentum, and he's a handful for sure. But we talk a lot about that. I think that we've got to focus on the champion, Cade Ruotolo, because Cade Ruotolo made history in the 77 kilogram division. Cade Ruotolo, 19 years of age, becomes the youngest male ADCC champion in history and hit a 100% submission rate. That is rarely seen, especially at this higher level. And that if there were any doubts that Cade Ruotolo wasn't already a superstar, put that to rest, because he came out and he had a series of really, really impressive matches. I'm going to go through them in order. First match, armbar win against Lachlan Giles. Second match, hit a heel hook against Roberto Jimenez. Mm-hmm. Third match, PJ Barge hit one of the most spectacular submissions, hit the armbar off the scramble in that one. And then the final, a heel hook against Mika Galvao. First person to ever submit Mika Galvao in competition in a very long time. Probably since Mika was a little kid in the juvenile ranks. Cade Ruotolo, just what an incredible performance. He looked phenomenal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He looked great. He went through and he had tough fights. None of his fights were laid back. They were all wars. He got to Mikael, and honestly, my prediction was it'd be Mika, Ty, and JT at the end. But I felt like in that match with Mikael, I felt like Mikael played. He came out strong in the first couple of matches. On that match, I felt like the strength difference, you can see that Ty was throwing him around a little bit more, and I'm not used to seeing Mika get thrown that way, especially with the wizard and going back and forth in those scrambles. And I noticed that when he was on his back, Mika's on his back, he's kind of just playing that guard and just not really attacking. And I can hear his father in the background telling him, "Hey, let's go. You know what I mean? Like push the pace. You're in the position." But he wasn't really reacting the way he usually reacted in that fight. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Mika had his own tough run to the final, right? He had a points win over Oliver Taza in the first round. He had a really nice surgical submission against Renato Canuto in his second round match. And then had, as is always the case, had a war with Dante Leon in the semifinal match. So they both had really tough paths to the final. I think if you actually look at the total match time, I think that Mika did spend more time in competition because he had, I think it was about 27 minutes total match time compared to Cade, who hit a couple of submissions. I think he was somewhere around about the 20-minute mark of match time. So I'm not sure if there was a distinct physical advantage for one or the other. Mika is known for being incredibly strong, whereas Cade, one of his greatest assets is the gas tank, right? He never stops, never gets tired. And very different styles, because I think Mika is very composed. He's a little more conservative. And then when he sees the opening, bang, he strikes like a cobra strike. Whereas Cade thrives in the chaos. He puts so much pressure on guys that they just break and they wilt, and he finds that opening. Well, what's interesting is that wasn't the case for either of these guys. That Mika was insistent upon a leg attack. He got into like a calf slicer attack. He was using a lot of deep leg entanglements that had Cade in some trouble, but it wasn't his usual style of see an opening and strike. It was more a case of trying to grind his way into those submissions. Whereas Cade, he couldn't play that game of opening up and running around because Mika was slowing him down with the leg entanglements. But Cade hit this heel hook counter because Mika put himself in such a position that he locked his own legs in such a way that Cade was able to catch that heel hook and get the finish. So I think maybe it was somewhat of a strategic technical error by Mika, very opportunistic reaction from Cade in recognizing the opportunity, and one of the most spectacular finishes we've seen in an ADCC final for a long time.
Right. No, and credit to Mika. You know what I mean? He's young. He's still, a rookie in this game, and he's been
They,
finding
they both are.
best
They're both
tools.
kids.
So
They're teenagers.
right, exactly. Like hats off to him and his father. They've done an amazing job there in Manaus
Yeah,
with Diego and Fabricio and a lot of other talent that people don't know about in
right.
that
Coming
room.
through.
A lot of up and coming talent, and I know I've had the opportunity to see those kids grow through the ranks. And again, this is just the beginning for that kid. He's going to be a problem. I'm sure that Melky's going to go back and they're going to make the adjustments, and they'll be prepared. You know.
Yes, I agree. I think that that this match showed that the future of no-gi grappling is very, very bright. While of course we have a couple of very dominant figures in Gordon Ryan being the most obvious example, and we have a number of returning champions in people like Yurisa Moyes and Kainan Duarte. It goes to show as well that there is a new generation coming through. And when you have somebody like Cade, 19 years of age, becoming the youngest ADCC champion in history, I think it goes to show that, the future of no-gi grappling is in good hands.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. I got to agree. 66. There were some upsets there. All right.
Yes, they were.
You know what? One that really stood out was Gary Tonin and Sam McNally.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my thing going into this one was, how was Gary Tonin's weight cut? That was my biggest thing, because he's a big boy to cut to 45. So
Yeah.
obviously the weight cut had to been a long term. So that was one of the things that I was worried about, him coming down to 66.
I think it hurt him. I think it hurt him big time. I think that Gary is in the unfortunate position is that he is a little bit too small for the 77 kilogram division, and he's too big for 66. That when he's gone in against guys at 77, he's looked good, but he's by no means the biggest man in that bracket. And sometimes, that's the difference. Whereas 66, 145 pounds, that's a big drop for him. And I'm sure he approached the weight cut professionally. I'm sure he did everything right, but he didn't look good. He came out and man, he's so skinny. He looked like a freaking crack addict. It was kind of scary to see, I'm usually used to seeing Gary Tonin full of life, kind of, very dynamic, sort of very active. And I think his style, he looked a little more subdued. He looked a little, didn't quite have that same edge that we used to see from him, So I think maybe the drop was a little bit too big. But, obviously Gary's Gary, man. He's a veteran. He's been around forever. People love him. He's one of the most entertaining grapplers we've ever seen. But it was a huge upset for him to lose to Sam McNally in that first one. And it wasn't the only upset, right? There were a couple of others.
There was a couple. Again, a great match between Cole Abate and Fabricio. That one was really razor close. To me personally, I think it could have gone either way. Yeah. And it's tough. And people say, oh, well, he got robbed. And we don't know what the judges are looking at, if they're remembering what they saw at the beginning. Are they going off of the last minute or 2 minutes of action? But I thought it was razor close. It could have gone either way. I think they both performed incredibly. Again, Abate's still, a kid. And to me, much respects to Guilherme and the crew at AOJ. They did an amazing job. And again, I've been seeing Cole since he was a child, and you could tell that this kid was going to be special.
So I think people sometimes forget that Cole is so young and the expectations are so high upon him. He is phenomenal. Cole Abate is an incredible grappler. He is a truly professional athlete already at such a young age, but he's still very much a work in progress. Right. He's definitely ahead of his years. He is, by far one of the most promising talents that we've ever seen when it comes to jiu-jitsu, to be this young and to be, this good. But the truth is that he's still gaining experience, and that this ADCC, to even get to ADCC, by winning trials in such incredible fashion without conceding a single point, with finishing every match in the regulation period, to then even fight his way onto the world stage, to get onto ADCC was a huge achievement. For him to lose his first match against Fabricio Andre by a razor-thin decision, it is by no means the worst thing in the world. I'm sure he would have wanted to go all the way. I'm sure that he wanted to win. He wanted to represent his team on that stage. But, man, we will see him back.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I totally agree with that. I think that, like I said, AOJ is doing an amazing job since he's moved there. You can see the evolving of his game. Guilherme and Rafa, they're very good at the strategy, and they work hard. They've always been a hardworking, and all the talent that they have in that room only makes you better. I think I've always said, if you're the best one in the room, you're in the wrong room. So by him moving to a room where there's just a bunch of killers and you're getting your ass beat, that's probably the best thing for anybody.
Yeah, incredible room, incredible team, did really special things. But let's talk about Diogo Reis, the champion, because I got to give this guy his props, man. What an amazing performance that Diogo Reis, another trials winner. There were a number of trials winners actually on the podium at this year's ADCC. If you look at the actual the results, there was Giancarlo, who won 88 kilos, Cade Rotolo at 77, and Amy Campo over 60. So Diogo was the fourth athlete to get gold who came into ADCC by qualifying and earning his place in the tournament. He wasn't a returning medalist. He wasn't invited. He fought his way onto the event. And he had a pretty solid run against some very, very tough guys. I'll just go through his run very quickly. His first match was against Ash Williams from the UK. That was a 2-0 win in a 10-minute match. That was a hard one on a takedown. His second match had to go against his teammate, Fabricio Andre. That was a 0-0 decision win in a very energetic back and forth match. And a lot of people were wondering whether it would be a legit match or not. I didn't see any signs that they figured that one out ahead of time. They went for it. And then he had, again, a really tough match against Josh Cisneros in the semifinal. Josh, of course, is a phenomenal athlete with a great game for ADCC, that wrestle jitsu. Diogo once again went out there, won 2-0 via a takedown. And then his his first place match against Gabriel Souza of ZR Team, a 3-0 win after 20 minutes. Diogo Reis, man, that was a very incredible performance. But for me, the most special moment of all of that was when he brought his coach, Melky Galvao, onto the mat. During his post-match interview, he called Melky out into the middle of the mat, and they shared a moment there. Melky was, of course, extremely emotional. He'd just seen his son, Mika, lose in the 77-kilo final. He came straight back out to coach Diogo to the gold medal, his first homegrown ADCC champion. And now, in the same year that Melky Galvao, in less than a calendar year, actually, if you go back to 2021 as well, he's now seen Fabricio Andre win the gold medal at the IBJJF World Championships. He's seen Mika win the gold medal at the IBJJF Championships, World Championships, and he's now also seen Diogo win the gold medal at the ADCC World Championships. So his three star pupils, his three main students have all picked up major titles in less than one calendar year. I think is an incredible result for one of the hardest working and nicest guys you can meet in the business. And Melky deserves all the praise here, of course, in creating such amazing athletes.
Absolutely. I mean, shout out to Melky. I've known those kids probably since green belts. I've always said that Diego's very strategic, very, very smart fighter. He's very, timed, and he doesn't take risks when he doesn't need to, but he's also aggressive when he needs to be. And that's something that he displayed in all his matches here. Again, Melky's done a great job with those kids, and man, they've always been workhorses. And Melky has this structure and this discipline with those kids, and he's guided them the right way. And congratulations to Coach Melky. He's doing a great job. And like I said, there's more than those three guys in that gym. There's a lot of other ones, Brenda Lariza and a lot of up and comers that people don't know about in that Manaus group. So I'm not surprised that Diego got won it, because I've known that kid and I've always felt he's has the potential to be where he's at today.
It was a very competitive division as well. And for me, 66 was the one division that I had the hardest trouble or the hardest time predicting who would win that, because there was no one real favorite for me. That there were no returning champions. The best you had was Kennedy Maciel, who took the silver medal in 2019, right? But if you looked at the lineup, there were probably at least 4 or 5 guys who I believed were fully capable of winning the division. Right. A lot of that depended on how the bracket would shape up, and those results definitely, that was definitely the case. The bracket had a huge influence on how this division played out. But there were a number of guys that I thought, man, they could do this. They could win gold medal, and there was no one person who I thought had a clear advantage. For Diogo to emerge in a division that competitive, I think is really impressive. And I also want to point out as well that Gabriel Souza, his opponent in the final as well. Man, Gabriel, all heart, just an incredible athlete who went out there and fought through some tough moments, some real adversity to get into the final. This whole division was amazing, was full of talent. But 66 kilos is... I don't think it's going to settle down, though. I don't think that Diogo has a particular advantage should he return at the next ADCC as champion. I don't think that he's going to be like, the unbeatable returning champion, because there are so many guys who are just like hungry and coming after him and stuff. We could potentially see a completely different result next time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously, Gabriel Souza, we've had him on EUG, and we saw the fight between him and Diego Pato.
Right.
I felt like he made some great adjustments in that semifinals with Pato, because Pato is dangerous. Obviously, we saw it in the with the fight with Kennedy. He's got some tricky entanglements, but it's those guys. They fought before, and I think that Pato's beat him.
Yeah.
In most of those fights. So Gabriel had a great game plan. He played the game properly. He stayed out of those entanglements, and shout out to him as well. These kids are coming, and like you said, Diego's going to come back in that division, but there's also going to be more hungry guys coming in there to give him a run for his money.
Something I wanted to point out as well is that along with the absolute division final, the under 66 kilogram final was the only division to have 2 Brazilians facing against each other in the final.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's something good to note there. Let's go to the female plus 60. What are your thoughts?
Amy Campo. Wow, what a coming out party for that young lady. Incredible that she came through to get this one. Again, I think she was a dark horse to win this one. That her performance at this tournament, she leveled up. That she came knowing fully what she needed to do to win, and she had a real tough run. She had to beat Elizabeth Clay in her opening round match, Gabby Garcia in her semifinal match, and then Rafaela Guedes in her final. 3 extremely tough opponents, and Amy Campo came through out of nowhere, let's say, to win the gold. A West Coast Trials winner, based in Las Vegas. I feel like maybe the hometown advantage was a factor here, because of course she won Trials that was based in Las Vegas, and so was the World Championships. There's a lot to be said for that. I think the hometown advantage is real, and maybe was a factor, but her performances were very impressive.
Yeah, no, for sure. Amy was the dark horse. I thought she was going to be the dark horse. She did an amazing job during the West Coast Trials. I think she beat Elizabeth Clay, passed to the weak side. She was getting past that guard, knee slicing through. I was very impressed with her and staying calm with Gabby, because Gabby's nothing easy to deal with. She stayed calm. She weathered the storm, and then she got to her position and able to do that. Man, her final, again, she was being patient. She was smiling. She was having a great time.
Yeah.
and she's composed, and that's something that you don't see a lot of. You know, some people are like just go go go, but she was able to stay calm, weather the storm, and get to the position she needed to get to.
And I picked Rafaela to win that division as well.
Agree.
You know, based on Rafaela's performances of late, based on her no-gi game, I thought that she was. I personally felt that she was the favorite for that division. But yeah, Amy was able to play a very smart game and took the gold. So yeah, huge.
Yeah, I'm curious if we'll see Gabby back in 2 years.
I
What do you
don't
think?
think so.
You don't think
I
so?
really don't think so. I think this was her swan song. I think that this was her final chance, especially if you consider her performance at the last IBJJF World Championships that she competed in 2021, where she lost in both the weight division and the open class to Yara Suarez and Gabby Pesanya. And now losing ADCC this year. I think that basically she's had an amazing career. You know, she's
Absolutely.
got all the titles to her name, but the game has moved on, and you know she's aged out, and there's no shame in that. You know, you can't continue competing forever. Nobody stays at the top forever, and I think it's time for her to step aside and let the next generation come through.
Agree. That's like what I tell everybody too. You know, people always tell me, "Oh, you should compete." I'm like, listen, my time's passed. I don't want to. You know, I'd rather focus on creating other students and world champions. And I think there's a point where, like you said, you know, that's it. It's like the new generation's coming, and it's time to just go on and start building something like she's done. She has an amazing school in Eastvale, and just as long as she's happy and she's doing her thing, I think that'll be the best thing for her.
She's earned it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now we've got the minus 60, which was, honestly, I'll be real with you. I thought that Bianca Basilio was going to win this division.
I thought that she was definitely one of the favorites. Bianca Basilio, incredible athlete, returning champion, both gi and no gi world champion, ADCC champion. Based on her style, based on her track record, for sure, Bianca was one of the favorites. But being that I am from Wales,
Yes,
and I was very, very happy to see that red dragon flag flying up there on the huge screens when Fionn came out, when she won, she got her hand raised. A very special moment for me. Never thought I would see that. I was hoping that we would see a European athlete on the podium, but to see somebody from Wales, that's a big deal for me. But she did so in a really impressive fashion as well. I mean, Fionn's performance, 10-0 and a submission in her opening match against Adele Fornarino from Australia. A 6-0 win against Bia Mesquita in her semi-final match, the lady goat, right? Bia Mesquita. And then a 10-0 win against Brianna St. Marie from Canada in the final. That is a very, very emphatic performance. A total of 26 points in 3 matches and a submission. Amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, we go back to the European, grappling. They're coming. And I mean, they're only getting better. I know she did some training at Essential with JT. She did her camp there as well. Right. And she looked sharp. She looked confident. She looked like from day one that she was on a mission.
Well, this is also Fionn's 3rd ADCC, right? She went for the first time in 2017. She was still a brown belt. And she, was nowhere near the same athlete that she is now. That was 5 years ago. She returned in 2017, of course. 2019, excuse me. And she lost in the final to Bianca Basilio, took the silver medal. And I think a lot has changed for Fionn since then. She, as you say, the change of circumstances. She's now she's been training with JT and everybody at Essential BJJ, and I think that everything's just come together for her. She's matured. She's got a lot more experience as a competitor. She's managed to also quash a lot of the self-doubt that she had about herself as a competitor, because I think that she she had almost like this underdog complex that she's like, I'm from a small place, we don't have access to world-class jiu-jitsu. I'm just from a little country, I'm from Europe. I'm never going to have the same level of performance as people from the big, huge teams with famous coaches and all the resources and everything. She did it the hard way. She came up the hard way. She competed as much as she could. She's won titles in almost every major tournament there is now, and culminating in this ADCC gold medal. So, Fionn Davis is just an incredible story of how she got there.
Yeah, no, congratulations to Fiona on an amazing performance in her division, and the sky's the limit for the European fighters.
Yeah, and another final as well with two non-Brazilians. You got Canada and Wales in the final in a division with people like Bianca Basilio and Bia Mesquita. That was something of a surprise as well.
Yes, it was. And, like I said, the new generation, some people are evolving, and I feel like some of the, the other athletes have just kind of like, okay, yeah, I've been there. And sometimes I feel like they get complacent and they don't keep evolving. Do you believe in that, or?
Yeah, you can't remain the same in jiu-jitsu, right? Because jiu-jitsu evolves so quickly. That's one of the things that I like about jiu-jitsu the most, is that there's always something new to learn. There's always something to improve upon. Something that you have done for years suddenly becomes irrelevant or obsolete. It's canceled out by a new technique, or something that you've done for years suddenly has this sort of great reimagining of the technique or the style or the system that you've been playing, and it suddenly becomes new and all of a sudden becomes even more effective than it was. Jiu-jitsu is in a state of constant evolution, and if you don't match that evolution, if you don't evolve your game, you're going to get left behind. And I've seen that a lot. When I used to train, let's say back in Brazil, for example, I used to train with a lot of old school guys, guys who were maybe, hobbyists, not necessarily on the cutting edge of jiu-jitsu, that they would come in and they would train as a pastime, but they had the same games forever. Sometimes these guys were 4th or 5th degree black belts, but they never made the move to evolve. And they played the same game that they had for decades, and it didn't work as much anymore because the game evolved, the jiu-jitsu evolved, and if you don't evolve, you will get left behind.
Yeah, and I feel like back then, like you're saying, they were one-dimensional. Either you were a top player or you were a bottom player. You never said, what happens if I end up on my back and I don't have a guard? And I feel nowadays people are starting to realize I need to learn wrestling. I need to be on my back. I need to have a great guard recovery. I need to have great passing, because again, sometimes it doesn't go your way and you get swept and you end up on your back. It's like, okay, well, that just went out the door.
Yeah.
I don't have a guard.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because we're not just seeing new techniques developed. We're not just seeing new concepts developed or new systems, but we're also seeing the synthesis of different phases of grappling as well. Because there's the kind of the catchphrase being thrown around now, wrestle jitsu, okay, which is meant to signify the combination of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. You had a lot of guys coming in who were wrestlers, adapting their grappling style to the jiu-jitsu game, going on to learn submissions. But then you've also had a lot of submission specialists, more sort of traditional jiu-jitsu players, who have adapted wrestling into their games very effectively. And you've now seen it represented every weight class at ADCC this year. Everybody from, let's say, Gabriel Souza and Josh Cisneros in the under 66 kilogram division, Isaac Michel and Wagner Hoscher in the 88 kilogram division, right up to Nick Rodriguez in the over 99 kilogram division. That these guys are good examples of combining wrestling and jiu-jitsu together. They're not the only examples, but they're just a couple who spring to mind. And there are many others like that.
Yeah. And again, I've been in some of these ADCC camps where Cobrinha, back in his day, he's bringing in, wrestlers and high-level wrestlers, Olympic wrestlers, and you're like, okay, well, he had to adapt. He brought on a wrestling coach, Kenny Johnson, and You know, at first, obviously, it's a learning process, but once they adapted it and put it together, you could see the difference. Like, oh, okay, I got it. And I feel like I always tell people that come in or parents that ask me, hey, where should I put my kid in first? And I always say wrestling. And I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. But they say, why do you say that? Because I feel like that's where the base comes from. You know, if you have a great base and bring that to jiu-jitsu, you're gonna be a little bit more ahead, one step ahead of everyone else.
You know? So I think the only division that we haven't talked about yet is the absolute division, and sure. This was just carnage. This this absolute division bracket, when it came out, I was sat there and I was about 3 or 4 rows back, and I saw Mo Jassim walk past with a piece of paper, and he handed it off. And I was sat looking over Henry Cejudo's shoulder. He had the paper bracket, and I'm like, whoa, is that it? So I was looking at it with a couple of other people, and it was just bonkers, man. That's the thing about the absolute, right? Is that they always make matches that you would never see anywhere else. And we had matches like Nick Rodriguez versus Andy Varela first round. We had Victor Hugo, who is about 265 pounds, going against Fabricio Andre, 145 pounds in the first round match. And then just standout matches like Felipe Pena versus Roberto Jimenez, Pedro Mourinho versus Tairo Otolo. You had some really wild matches in the opening round, and then as it went on from there, it just got better and better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the final, obviously, Yuri came up on top, but again, you had Nicolas Marigali right there.
Yeah, well, Yuri got his revenge over Marigali, right? Because Marigali had beaten him in the weight class the day before. I think that's interesting because, you know, Yuri being a returning champion, an under 99 kilogram champion in 2017, he of course won 88 in 2015. So for Yuri to go out second round to Nicolas Marigali, who, as we said, only started training Nogi this year, that was a huge upset.
For sure.
But then they met again in the final, and for Marigali to get through to the final was huge. That was mind-blowing in itself. But Yuri was able to dig deep in that one and was able to win via referee's decision after a very hard-fought 20-minute match. Actually, I say referee's decision, I believe it was negative points. Marigali took for pulling guard.
Right.
But yeah, incredible performance by Yuri Simoes, who now becomes a 3-division champion.
Crazy.
So narrowly missed out on setting that record because Gordon beat him to it just a couple of hours before, because Gordon won 88 kilos in 2017, won double gold in 2019, and then came back and won the over 99 kilogram this time round. So 3 different weight classes. But yeah, Yuri was hoping to do the same, but he'd have to settle for 2 weight class medals and an absolute gold medal. That's not so bad.
No, not at all. And again, and that final, a lot of people were saying, oh, Yuri was stalling, or, you know, he wasn't going forward. I mean, from what I saw, he was going forward. I think people don't realize, like, Marigali's got a hard, difficult guard to deal with. He's got long legs, and he kept pressing. He was going forward the whole time. Unfortunately, Marigali, you know, pulled guard, and he got the 2 negatives. But again, he felt more comfortable on his back, and he felt like he can sweep. So again, it's a risk you got to take sometimes at that level.
Calculated risk, but one that, you know, yes, you know, you pay the price if it doesn't work out. But Yuri, I mean, look at his run. He had his first round match against Lachlan Giles. Lightning wasn't able to strike twice for Lachlan. He had that breakout performance in 2019 in the absolute division. Wasn't able to get at Yuri's legs for this one. So Yuri then went on to beat Nick Rodriguez in his second round match. His semi-final match was against Cyborg. Man, he had to work hard to put Cyborg down in that one, but he did. Right. He scored via a takedown. And then the final against Marigali. Marigali's side of the bracket actually was interesting because his first round match was a submission against a former teammate in Vinicius Trattor of Alliance. Of course, now Marigali is part of Dream Art in the gi and represents New Wave in Nogi. And he was able to submit Trattor. He then had to beat Bodoni, the 88 kilogram champion, his training partner, in the second round match. He beat Bodoni 6 points to 2. So it just goes to show that Meregali is, you know, one of the best in the world if he's able to beat a guy who just won gold in his weight division. And then one of my favorite matches of the weekend was Meregali versus Tai Ruotolo in the semifinal. That was absolutely incredible to watch that one.
Yeah, no, Tai brought it, and he was not stopping. You can see the size difference. And Tai, kids, they bang with whoever. It doesn't matter the size, and they give it 120% going forward the whole match. They do not stop. That's one thing, like you said earlier, they've got a gas tank for days, and they will keep going. And I mean, it was beautiful to see what Tai was able to accomplish as well in the absolute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was disappointing for Tai that he lost first round in his weight division. Like we said, he went out to Josh Hinger, his teammates, in the opening round match. But he more than made up for it in his weight division, submitting Pedro Mourinho in his opening round match. Won a decision against Felipe Pena. And actually, I believe Pena had a penalty point against him in the second round match. That was a war as well. You know, Tai, again, you talk about the size difference against Meregali. Pena is also huge in comparison to Tai Ruotolo. And Tai came out there and went head-to-head with him. So, you look at that, 3 very tough physical matches against Pedro Mourinho, against Felipe Pena, against Nicolas Meregali in short succession. And then he actually took the bronze medal because Cyborg forfeited the third-place match. So Tai Ruotolo hit the podium at 19 years of age. His brother gets gold. He gets bronze in the absolute. Good weekend for the Ruotolo brothers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now the super fight, right? We had Gordon and Andre. A lot of years shit-talking, going back and forth, the slap, the asking, I'm sorry. 3 years later, here we are. We got the match that everybody's been waiting for. Like I said, Gordon was on a roll that day, and both days. And again, I felt like you could see that it, like you said earlier with Gabby, sometimes it's just passing of the torch,
Yeah, I think it was just, an almost impossible mountain to climb for Andre Galvao. He didn't even need to do this super fight.
For sure.
That's the truth. Galvao's legacy is secure. He will go down as the greatest super fight champion in history of ADCC. Of course, that record could well be broken, by Gordon Ryan, should Gordon maintain that position for the next couple of editions. But Galvao's ADCC legacy is 100% secure. And he didn't need to come back, but he did. And he decided to go up against a grappler much younger than himself. I think there's a 14-year age difference. And, of course, Gordon, who has been picking up so much momentum in these last couple of years, huge, much bigger in comparison to Galvao. I'm not sure what Galvao weighed when he stepped on the scales. Gordon was about 220, 225, which is not that big for Gordon, even though he is physically, stands almost a head higher than Galvao. But it was a very one-sided match. It was clinical. It was surgical. Galvao really wasn't able to do much of anything apart from sort of prolong it. He was able to just to fend off Gordon for time, but that's Gordon's game. He doesn't rush. He rarely comes out and takes people out quickly. He did twice at ADCC, actually, which was a little bit surprising. He scored an 11-second submission against Roosevelt Suter in his opening in his weight class, and he tapped out Nick Rodriguez very quickly with a heel hook as well. But Gordon usually likes to take his time with his opponents because he likes to show off his jiu-jitsu. And that's exactly what he did. He took Galvao down, he passed the guard, he got the back, and he got the choke, just like we've seen him do 100 times before. And it was a really impressive display of jiu-jitsu technique.
No, for sure. And again, I think he played the same strategy off the bat. He let Andre just, take him down, put him on his back. Same thing he did with Nicky Rod. And then he was like, okay.
Well, he doesn't need the negative point that way, right? I think people were a little surprised by that strategy. It's like, well, why did Gordon let them take him down? Because in the final, or in the super fight, if you pull guard at any point, then you get hit with a negative. But if you let yourself be taken down before points have kicked in, then you can play from guard as long as you like, again, with no penalty, and the guy doesn't actually score for it. So it's one of those peculiarities in the ADCC scoring system that maybe the less experienced viewers were unaware of.
Right. And Gordon's got a great guard. So, of course, hey, if there's no points going on, hey, go ahead and take me down. I'll play guard. I think Mikey Musumeci would have been doing the same thing, right? He would have been like, okay, just take me down, no points. I'll get on my back. And Mikey's got one of the best guards in the world. And then, again, play the game from there. So,
exactly.
Again, I think Gordon's obviously he's the best no-gi grappler right now. I think it's going to take a while for anybody to catch up, maybe in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But
yeah, I don't know who.
What's next for Gordon is the thing, right? Yeah, what's next for Gordon? Because who's going to want to fight him?
Well, I think Gordon is looking for the rematch with Felipe Pena as soon as possible because, they have very much unfinished business. Right. When that match will take place remains to be seen. I think Gordon was really looking forward to competing against him at ADCC this weekend. And as we mentioned, Felipe didn't make it through. Right. I think that Gordon would like a rematch with Victor Hugo because Victor Hugo was the only guy who wasn't submitted or, who was able to hang on there. And Gordon, I'm sure that's going to eat at him. He's the kind of guy that's almost as bad as losing for him. He's like, I didn't submit the guy. That's terrible. That's the worst possible thing for him. So I think that he'll be looking for a match with Victor Hugo as well. But yeah, it's a great question. What is next for Gordon? I think it's going to be a short list of people who will want matches with Gordon now. It was already a very short list. It's going to be even harder to find opponents for him. But of course, we do know of one match that will take place. And in the next ADCC 2024, it's going to be the super fight, Yuri Simoes against Gordon Ryan. Yes,
that's a good, interesting matchup. Again, that gives 2 years for Yuri and Kyle Terra, which is, a mastermind of strategy and also techniques. So I think they'll be prepared for Gordon, but I still feel like also Gordon's got 2 years to keep adding to his toolbox, right? So keep evolving and doing his thing. And again, I just don't see the next 4 or 5 years that anybody's going to be able to do much to Gordon.
Yeah, I'm a little unsure of how Gordon can be beaten at this point because we never saw him in trouble once this weekend. There were no gaps in his game. There were no chinks in his armor. Technically sound everywhere he went. It's a very tough proposition to beat Gordon. You go head to head with that guy. If there's anybody who can see a path to victory, I believe that is Kyle Terra. He is like you said, a mastermind. He's one of the greatest minds, in my opinion, for jiu-jitsu. The guy is legitimately a technical and strategic genius. I mean, he's so clever. And Yuri Simoes is a fantastic athlete. Of course, Gordon does hold a win against Yuri. December 2017, he beat Yuri by submission on the first Kasai event, shortly after they both took gold at ADCC in Finland 2017. And it's a question mark about how Yuri will approach this match differently to the last one in search of victory. But like you said, they've got 2 years to come up with a game plan. So I'm sure they'll come up with something, but there's only one way to bet your money, right? I think that against Gordon, it's a very dangerous game.
Yes. And I'm also curious, obviously Mo Jasmine, he did an incredible job on this one. I'm curious to see what they're going to do for 2024. If he's still going to be a part of it. Would love for him to still continue to do this because, again, this was above and beyond of everything else, any other ADCC we've seen. I know he's doing the opens. He's going to stay doing the opens, but man, I wish he would stay on and continue this.
Me too, man. That's the thing, you know. Mo has set such a high standard for ADCC now. The ADCC 2022, we've never seen anything like it. My only question is that how can it be improved upon? Because he said that he doesn't want to do it unless he can do it bigger and better next time. I was like, what are you going to do? Are you going to do it in the Dallas Cowboy Stadium or something? I don't know, you know, but Mo is he's a visionary, and he put together a really good team. And you know, I think the event, for anybody who was watching, for anybody who was there, incredible experience, unforgettable, and yeah, I can't wait for the next one.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Hal. I had an incredible time doing the interview. I hope to do more with you on this level. And man, again, your next journey, I know you're doing your other avenues you've taken. I'm excited to see what the future holds for you. And again, this is your home anytime. And any shout outs or anything you'd like to say to, you know, to everybody out there in the jiu-jitsu community?
I mean, just very simply, very thank you for all the support and the kind messages that I received at ADCC. And over the last couple of weeks, I've received so many messages from fans and people in the industry. I had so many people coming up to me at ADCC last weekend. It's really, really nice to you know, be recognized by so many people. Yeah, of course, you know, jiu-jitsu, I'm a lifer. I'm not going anywhere. You know, there's some of us do this because it's a job, and then others do it because it's a passion. And I'm definitely in the latter camp. So, you know, plenty of cool stuff to come. I'm going to be releasing a lot of new projects. You can follow BJJ Hacks for a bit of fun. You know, that's kind of my side project that I've always enjoyed doing. Releasing cool jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube. And yeah, definitely some big announcements coming soon. So just it should be good.
Nice. Well, thank you guys for tuning in on this ADCC 2022 breakdown. And stay tuned. We'll be doing a lot of other breakdowns during, you know, other events as well. So again, keep evolving in everything that you guys do.